In the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, a favorite scripture which I featured in other video posts, the world is referred to as a karma kestra. Karma kestra means theater or field of activity. And whether it is a physical act that is done through the instruments of our body or occurs in the thoughts and imaginings of our mind, from birth to death, we are ceaselessly engaged in some form of activity. Even as we are sleeping, many involuntary physiological processes, such as respiration, digestion, the beating of our heart, the filtration of our liver and kidneys, and other processes, continue to carry out their functions without any effort or awareness whatsoever on our parts. Having already addressed ways by which we may tame, restrain, and clear our minds in earlier posts, it is only reinforcing for me to say that our mind-body comprises a single unit of innumerable and ever-changing components, and even more true to add that they are inseparable and highly complex servants of our soul that provide a unified operational system for our entire human life. Many believe that it is the thought activity within our brains, which is the major instrument of our minds, that motivates and animates the actions that manifest through our body, and tell them what to do. And of course, this is true, whether it is conscious, planned, and intentional, or unconscious, unplanned, unintentional, and habitual or impulsive. And along these same lines, it can generally be said that our thoughts and actions can be either proactive or reactive, meaning I am thinking and doing this of my own volition, based on my own intention, initiative, and inspiration. Or I am thinking and doing this in response and reaction to influences in my environment and what I am experiencing through the influential inputs from my five senses. That is, what I am seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and or touching. There is so much more that can be said about all these different kinds of actions and doing. In fact, to do justice, I would have to produce an entire set of encyclopedias that would cover nearly all of the interdisciplinary fields of study associated with the physical and social sciences, and then venture to include those far more challenging and elusive aspects of the spiritual sciences. But given what has been expressed thus far, it is easy to see that all the various actions in which we engage, both physical and mental, both voluntary and involuntary, actually occur within the kingdom of doing, as the musical group Earth, Wind, and Fire described in their timeless hit entitled Fantasy. And yet, the focus of this post is more about being. What inspires, motivates, and frames our ways and patterns of acting or doing, which for me first came to mind many years ago when I came across a highly instructional quote by the Greek philosopher Epictetus, who said, "First decide who you will be, then do what you have to do." This quote had a huge and lasting impact on me and became even more significant when I came across the book entitled Sai Baba's Mahavakya on Leadership. Mahavakya means grand or profound saying or pronouncement. And in this case, it was a profound treatise on leadership that was written by Dr. M.L. Chibber with careful oversight and direct input from Satya Sai Baba himself. I met the author in the late 1990s, who, apart from being a professor, was also a highly decorated lieutenant general in the Indian Army. Later, I worked with others to help design an international leadership development curriculum based on the principles contained in the book. And that's where I got the title for this post: First Be, Then Do. Now, if we go back to Epictetus's quote, "First decide who you will be, then do what you have to do," and take the first phrase, "First decide who you will be," we see that it suggests a very important and fundamental challenge, which can be summed up with these three questions. When all is said and done, what kind of person do I really want to be? What are the essential qualities and values that I want to characterize my character and my everyday demeanor? And three, how do I want to be seen, recognized, and regarded by others? Deciding who I want to be takes so much into account. And for that, each of us has to personally assess, reflect, and make such decisions for ourselves. But even as or when we decide, we will come to realize that it is really an ongoing process, since we can always grow and become more tomorrow than we are today. So then we come to the second part of the quote: then do what you have to do, which suggests that whoever we decide we will be should be consistent with how we speak, act, and behave. That is, there should be harmony between who we are and how we behave and interact in the world. So at least we can keep our own cognitive dissonance at a minimum. Now, going back to Chibber's book, which you can actually download for free, its main theme is that the most effective leadership will always rely on enduring human and spiritual principles, and what he refers to as the be aspect of the leader. That is, the qualities of character and selfless intent that rests within and by and large define the leaders themselves. For unless we are pretending, putting on a show, or are somehow otherwise constrained by others' desires and expectations, we will always speak and act based on who we are, because all behavior, all doing is always an inside-out process. So first be means to become and be the best person we can actually be by imbibing and exemplifying qualities of character that are admirable, respectable, and generate a good, reliable reputation. And then do simply means having the confidence, the courage, and the determination to act and speak on the basis of these good qualities. And now, this takes me back to my 8th grade teacher, who took me on as her project, so to speak, and often took me aside to tell me to always be true to myself. Of course, I didn't really know what she meant at the time, but that and other experiences with her kept resurfacing until I eventually came to see how important she and her advice truly was to me. Around 2008 or so, I learned that she was teaching in New Orleans, where another early mentor of mine who knew her was also living. So when I visited him in 2010, I mentioned her, but he told me she had passed away 2 years earlier. And then he remarked how wonderful a person she was and how much her students always admired and respected her. I was not at all surprised, but was just a bit disappointed that I was unable to tell her directly how valued she was and remains. Now, when playing any leadership role, we naturally have to align with the goals, the objectives, and the organizational culture at hand. Over the years, I played so many such roles in many diverse public, private, and nonprofit organizations, and often had to shift strategies and styles based on what had to be done, under what circumstances it had to be done, and the cultures, competencies, personalities, and proclivities of those who had to do it. But respect, good listening, good interpersonal communication, and objective, reflective observation were always a priority for me. And as I look back, I hope it was because my ambitions were more often spiritual and social, and not so selfish or personal. But one more point before I move to my conclusion, and that is that leadership does not always occur in organizational settings. Leadership, like good example, can and does occur in the family, in the neighborhood, in all relationships, and really in all that we do. But truth be told, the most important leadership by far is how we lead ourselves to ever higher ground. Sometimes we hear people say, "You do you." I've said it a few times myself, and I like it because it can be very encouraging and supportive. But in every case, we should consider, who is the you that is doing you? And that, of course, again, refers to those recommendations from Epictetus and Chipper, that we first decide who we will be and assure good being before we engage in doing. To be or not to be may be Hamlet's question, but it is not really our question. For being relates more to the quality and reality of the soul, to our own state of consciousness, to the good, to the peace and love that is somewhere there within us all. So the real question is, can I and will I do my best to act from that place? Do I have the confidence? Do I have the courage and the elevated intention to allow the truth of my best being to have her say in what I do? Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching and listening yet again. See you soon.